Good evening, and welcome to the Wakefield School Committee meeting of September 24th, 2024. We have just exited executive session into public meeting, and we will begin with as we usually do, with our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And next we will commence with the reading of our mission statement. The vision of the Wakefield Public Schools is to graduate students who are confident lifelong learners, who are respectful and caring members of their community. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. Now would be the part of our meeting where we have public comment. I don't think there's anyone in studio for public comment. Ian, do we have anyone on Zoom for public comment?
No.
And no. Okay. Moving on. I believe we have a consent agenda.
Move that the school committee approve the minutes of the September 10th, 2024 school committee meeting, accept the minutes of the September 12th, 2024 school committee student services subcommittee meeting, and the September 16th, 2024 school committee policy and communications subcommittee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. And moving on, Dr. Lyons.
Thank you very much. With the permission of the chair, I'd like to take items out of order.
Absolutely.
Try to get some people home a little bit earlier. We'd like to start off by inviting the principals to kind of introduce their new staff that we're welcoming to the Wakefield Public Schools. So, Matt, you want to start? All right, okay.
Never been bashful to get in front of a mic. Brian, why don't you join me as well, because we have a staff that in common. I'm not going to be alone. Okay. Matt's not used to this. He doesn't have any new staff. First, on behalf of Dull Bear, I'd like to introduce grade 4 teacher Kyle Virgin. Kyle, you can give a little wave. And Brian, do you want to introduce?
And at both Dull Bear and at Walton, we are joined by Andrea Faust. Andrea is our new K-2 science specialist.
Great.
That's what we've got here.
Tiffany?
Yeah, I don't know if my person's on Zoom, but I'll talk about it.
Welcome to Wakefield.
Thank
By the way.
She is. So joining us from Zoom is Greenwood's new school psychologist. This is Alyssa Kaplan.
Great.
Okay. Who's next?
Hi. I have 5 people to introduce. It's a big school though. So. I have 3 people here, and I wrote a little. Can I share a little bit about them?
Yeah,
Is that all right? Okay. And I want to extra appreciate them for being physically here, because we also have back to school night in 2 nights. We'll see lots of you there. So lots of late nights tonight. But they felt it was important to be here, which I appreciate. So we have Amy Chiaravalati. All right. Amy might look familiar to some of you. She comes to us from a distinguished career as an educator in Waltham and as the executive director of the Wakefield Alliance Against Violence and the prevention and wellness coordinator for the youth action team. So she has lots and lots of experience in Wakefield, and we've all worked with her for many years now. So we're glad to have her on our staff. Already her passion for health and wellness, coupled with her incredible ability to build relationships with students, colleagues, and families, have positioned her really well to partner with Melissa Tarnes, who's our veteran health teacher at the Galvin, and they are working to evolve our health and wellness curriculum to meet the needs of our students. So awesome to have Amy. Also, we have Greg Hurley here on the end. Greg, many of you have already interacted with because he's our new assistant principal in the lower house. He oversees the 5th and 6th grade at the Galvin. And he comes to us from a career as a teacher, a district administrator in Malden and Andover, and an advocate for creating schools that hold high expectations for students and adults in the community. And already in his first month, sort of hazed him. He's been through it all. Actually, no, we have a policy against that. We have not done that. But he has been a quick study. He's been awesome to work with. And I know many families are probably smiling because he's just built incredible relationships already with families, students, staff, and we're excited to have him. And awesome, Lauren Perillo, is that Perillo? I added a little accent there, has joined us as our special education coordinator in grades 6 through 8. She is an experienced and accomplished administrator from Medford and has brought her expertise and thoughtful approach to our community. She's also a proud Wakefield parent, so brings that awesome lens with her as well. So we're really happy to have both Greg and Lauren kind of round out Andrew and Danny, who's also joined us in the 5th grade as a special education leader. And then, two people who are unable to join us tonight. Mike Crocco is a 6th grade social studies teacher on Team G. And he has come to us from Kiplin, where he distinguished himself as an excellent teacher and coach and also teacher leader. He's already brought tons of positivity into the building, and he is already beloved by our students, so should be a good year for Mike. And Cynthia Wong is another familiar face to many people. She came to us from the Dolbear, where she was a para for 5 years, and like an incredible para, she won many awards at the Dolbear. And she is already pretty much award-winning at the Galvin. She is our Strive lead teacher, and she's already just done some really incredible work to make sure we're meeting the needs of each one of our students with specialized programming. So we're happy to have her with us as well. So those are our 5. Thank you.
And I think Joe's here for the high school representing Wakefield. Hi, Joe.
I am here. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. First, I want to introduce someone who's with us online who has an extensive counseling background. She comes to us as a guidance counselor. Most recently, Crystal Quinton was a counselor at Lowell High School. And prior to that, she was a counselor for a number of years at Chelsea High School. So we're excited about Crystal joining our guidance team. Thank you, Crystal, for being here tonight. We appreciate that as well. We have 7 other new teaching staff at the high school as well. A math teacher that's new to our school is Simon Kigwana. Simon, a little bit about Simon is that he worked in Haverhill previously in one of their smaller learning academies. Interesting note about Simon as well is that he studied to be a doctor, finished medical school, but rather than go and do a residency, he decided he wanted to teach, and we're fortunate to have him. Michael Richardson joins our special education team in our language-based learning area. Michael has worked at both Salem High School and High School. He brings a lot of knowledge as we work to build a language-based program at Wakefield Memorial. New Italian teacher on board, moved to us recently from Texas. Sylvia Tucci is a native Italian speaker who's taught at all levels, including high school previously. We're excited to have Sylvia fill that open Italian teaching position. Another math teacher we brought on board this year is Livia Bernhardt. Livia just recently graduated from Bates College, and she is pursuing her master's degree right now with the Harvard Graduate School of Education. We have an ELL teacher who's new to our school, but not new to us, Sarah Weisenborn. Previously taught at the Dolbear for, I believe, 1 year, and now she's working with our students in our ELL program at the high school. English teacher new to our school is Hallie Angel. We're real excited about Hallie joining our our team. She's taught at Drake High School for a number of years, and she has an extensive academic background. She graduated Dartmouth College for an undergrad and received her master's at Stanford University. Previously, she also taught at Cambridge Magnon, too. Vanessa Kadaris might be a name that folks know. Vanessa is a Wakefield High School graduate from 5 or 6 years ago. She attended Merrimack College, and she's joining us in our PE Health and Wellness program. She has she's a field hockey coach in Stoneham, and she does have some experience working for special education and ELL students. So she's going to be a great fit for us in the health and wellness program as well. And lastly, joining our music team is Philip Cataldo. Philip's a graduate of Ithaca College, recent graduate. He actually did his student teaching at Wakefield Memorial last year, and he jumped right in. He's been working in the marching band and the winter percussion group since last year, and so it's been kind of a seamless fit. And Phil's doing a nice job in our music program. And that's the 8 that we have that are new to Wakefield High School.
I'd like to invite Shannon Blacker to introduce staff. Shannon, can you hear me?
Yep. Hey, everybody. So I have 3 new staff at the Doyle. I have 2 new integrated teachers. Catherine Garvey. She is coming to us from maternity leave, actually, in another district. Just had a baby, so she is doing our half-day integrated program. And then we have a full-time integrated teacher, Alyssa DeBlasi. She is coming, a new grad from Merrimack College, who did her fellowship and last year in Linfield, and is coming to us straight out of college after getting her master's in moderate special needs. And then we have Nicole Piella, who is shifting from BCBA to our adjustment counselor this year at the Doyle. So we're lucky to have all of them. So thank you.
Thank you so much. No one at Woodville? Thank you so much. It's amazing.
Well,
Amazing stuff. Thank you. So, thank you so much, everybody. New teachers, thank you. New staff, administrators for being here. Really appreciate it. Coming up on the agenda, our school improvement plan. So our principals are staying. So if you would like to scoot, please do, and enjoy your evenings. And thank you so much for being here. It's much appreciated. Thank you. Bye-bye. So I just want to say a little bit about hiring before we shift on to the next agenda item. You know, I've said this before. I'll say this every year that I'm fortunate enough to be here. Hiring is one of the most important things we do, right? This is an interesting market that we're in terms of staff being recruited away and having some positions that are difficult to fill. But I can tell you that every time we have an open position and every time a principal has filled one of the positions, we get a call at central office and they'll summarize kind of the work that they've done and it ends something with like, or something like, you know, we've hired this person, we could not be more pleased, right? And I think it's evidence of the work and the effort they put in to hiring and really bringing people on board, right? And so, you know, in Wakefield, we have, in the Middlesex League, I believe at this point, we have the highest retention rate for faculty and staff, which is amazing, right? And so, and part of the reason people come and stay is because of the communities and the cultures that are created in your buildings. So we can't thank you enough for your efforts in that space. Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. So next agenda item, I'd like to take the items out of order again, and I'd like to ask Margaret. Margaret, are you online with us?
I am.
Okay, so Margaret Messier is going to be joining us this evening, talking a little bit about the AI guidance document, how this was created, who participated and contributed to this doc, And then after that, we'll move to school improvement plans. Margaret, it's all you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. So I'll be very brief with this. I just want to explain what motivated us to create it, our goals in creating it, and then how we're going to get it out for distribution. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, all right, just checking. I was in a class the other day where I had the video on freeze, and I showed a movie, and it took them like about 5 minutes to tell me that the screen was frozen. So now I'm but anyways, I think that the reason why we felt the need to create an AI teacher's guide, which Jason Pavey, the social studies coordinator, and I worked on over the summer, is just because of obviously the growing AI technology, the growing use of AI by students and staff, and a need for teachers to really, and students and families, to understand what's out there and what's acceptable use and what's unacceptable use. So I think it's really been motivated by the teachers really wanting to make sure that we are having these conversations with students, because while AI is really, really exciting, I can speak for myself and say I also find it slightly terrifying, because we want to make sure that it's not taking over in doing the work for students, but rather in aiding them to think more creatively and create the best products with what's available. So the first thing I'll talk about is the AI Teacher's Guide. And within this AI Teacher's Guide, we just kind of give some of the benefits and drawbacks of use of AI in education. We talk about a potential guideline that they could have in their classrooms. And I think that really the student family guidelines will serve as those guidelines to prompt those conversations. And additionally, something that I think will be really helpful is we put in some really helpful resources if teachers want to know more. I attended a phenomenal webinar last year with Greg Kowalik, who talked about all the potential uses for AI, but also how to teach kids to become more critical thinkers by how they use it. So that webinar is included in there as well. As I also will say that he recommended a lot of other districts that have very strong policies that said they don't mind if we borrow from each other. So I did cite them, but a lot of this is taken from districts who have strong policies already in place. This guide will go out to all 5 through 12 teachers, hopefully next week through the principals. Additionally, before bringing this to you, across departments at the high school, we had teachers look at this, provide feedback, see if they thought anything was missing. We also had Diana Ho, who's the library media specialist at the high school, take a look at it, and she did some updating of language for us, which was really helpful. And you'll note one of the things in the student family policy is that as AI and technology is constantly evolving, so will these guidelines. We have policy already that was voted on and is in the handbooks. This is more for information and education for faculty, families, and students. So the next thing I'll talk about is the student policy. And again, that really just tries to make it clear to students, this is how it's acceptable to use AI to aid you, and this is how it's unacceptable to use AI where it is doing the work for you. Additionally, in that policy, it talks about that no matter how you're using AI, you need to properly cite it, and we have tools available for students to cite their use of AI. For example, if they use it to brainstorm or help them create an outline, or to form a visual for a project that we're doing. Really, I'm still in awe of some of the things it could do. I think my mouth was agape for most of the webinar that I was in. So that's really the goals of these two policies, and principals are going to be sending out the families and student guidelines also next week to communicate it. But we just kind of wanted to bring it here and explain why we created it and how we're going to be using it. I think that was everything, but if anyone has any questions.
Any questions? Kevin?
Are there teachers right now actively using AI as part of their instructional practice? I'll stop with that.
I will say yes. I think teachers are using it to help differentiate a lot, which is a really great use of it, to say like I have a student with this needs, this is what I'm doing. How would I make some differentiation, some accommodations for these students? And they're getting suggestions that way to help enhance their scaffolding of lessons. But a really cool way I saw a teacher use it was he asked it questions. He asked it to be, this is like what I'm saying, it's amazing how you can use it. He asked it to be a character from a book they were reading. And he asked it questions as if he were interviewing the character. So it was almost like the kids were having a conversation with this character based on the responses. And that was a cool way I've seen it used. I think a lot of times teachers are using it just in their own brainstorming around planning. But yes, people are definitely starting to use it. And since, regardless of how we feel about it, since it's only evolving, we just really felt the need to address, like, here's some really productive ways it can make us more effective, rather than do our thinking for us.
Melissa?
I just had a quick question. I noticed that for the parent and family and student guide, study aids are supposed to be used with teacher consent.
Yes.
How do you imagine that working?
I imagine that all of this is only going to work if there's a lot of communication between students and teachers around what is acceptable use, and for students to say, I'm going to use AI to create a study guide. Can you help me create some prompts, or what are some questions I could ask to help it prepare me, or to help me create an outline? What we're trying to avoid are things like students on their own, unsupervised, going home and saying, write me an essay on where the red fern grows at the level of a sixth grader. So I think that it's gonna be shaky at the start, but I think we just have to keep emphasizing having those conversations. And something we tried to emphasize in the family guide is, if you're unsure if this is an acceptable use, please have that conversation with your teacher, and to encourage teachers to be kind of proactive in having those conversations with students.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question on the attribution piece of language learning on the student guide. And more specifically, before we called anything AI, we've all used Google Docs, we've all written emails in Outlook, we use Word, and it's helped us with typos and spelling errors and grammar issues. Are we expecting now that every person is going to say, Google Docs help me fix spelling errors? Or are we, because we don't seem to have like an exception for that, but I know it's a slippery slope, because you could then have your Grammarly plugin that maybe is doing more, but I guess where I was at is, like, there's not a single person that's not writing something probably either in Google Docs or Word and getting some grammar help or spelling corrections.
Definitely. I think what we're more concerned about, and that was where a lot of great conversation, especially with English teachers, debate happened as we were presenting this. It's like, we don't want multi-language learners, and we don't want students who struggle with writing to use this as a way to say, like, write me a sentence, right? But it could be a way for them to say, here's a sentence I've written, how could I improve it? And so we don't want it to be taking over the job of doing the syntax work for them. And we also talked about one of the reasons why we thought it was so important to put with teacher, I think we put oversight or teacher permission, is because if you're doing a grammar lesson and you're trying to make sure students understand grammar, you don't want them using it at all. Right, so I think that teachers have to be very specific about when it is okay to use it and when it's not.
Yeah, I just didn't understand how you would properly give attribution there. I mean, it just seemed like literally anytime you're writing a doc on the computer, you'd have to give attribution, and it felt like there's almost like an assumption there that if using Google Docs or Word, there's some basic level of grammar and spelling correction that maybe you don't have an attribution for.
Right, I think it's assumed that, spell check has bailed me out on quite a few occasions. I don't think we're expecting them to do, like, oh, it was, underlined in blue on Google Docs, so I used their suggestion, but more like if they actively use an AI tool where they're typing something into it and getting a response from it, that they're attributing that properly with citations. Okay. Sorry, I didn't understand my question.
Yeah, so that was the only part that I think wasn't clear to me from reading it, is that distinction, because you could argue that what Google Docs does and Word does is an AI tool, and it's been doing it for years and years, and I just felt like, if you want to make sure somebody has perfect grammar, perfect spelling, you probably need them to handwrite it, because if they're using any online tool to write their document, it's going to help them with typos and grammar issues.
Exactly, yeah, and I think all teachers expect that.
I would think a distinction would be the creation of content, in terms of, like, sort of fully fleshing out ideas as opposed to sort of crossing the T's and dotting the I's. Sort of, and that's what I read from this, is that sort of it sort of steps aside the incidental usage, and that's not you could call it AI. There's also, like, past that is like Word. They will affect your grammar, like they will change an entire sentence if they think that, and then they'll give you a word score. Oh, you got like a 87. If you want to get 100, change the sentence, put it here, and that's not quite what ChatGPT is sort of proposing.
I think you're spot on. I do think it is the creation of content, right? And the creation of passing off something else created by something else as your own. And I think one of the benefits that teachers have, and Margaret might be able to add to this, is that, teachers study kids and they know them as learners and they know them as content creators. They know their styles, right? They have a range of work that they've created in all content areas, right? So when, there are patterns that students kind of have in their work, and when something doesn't fall into that pattern, it's a prompt maybe for a different type of conversation. But one of the things that I think I'm pleased with what Margaret and teachers are doing is they're not shying away from the conversation. They're not locking it up, right? And saying, no, never. It's more like, it's here. We know it's here, right? But we also know that this can't replace your thinking or your work, right? So that's kind of an important distinction as well. But your point is well made, and I think your point about creating content is excellent.
This makes me think like this must be what the early conversations around the calculator must have sounded like. Like just, we're going to ruin our brains that we're not going to be doing long division by hand like all the time. But sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, I think going along with the content creation, I think the hard part is looking at how adults are using this in the real world, including content creators, like people in the arts fields, screenwriting, et cetera, where ChatGPT seems to be a great tool for when you have writer's block or you need to brainstorm an idea. You just used the example of write an essay on where the red fern grows from a sixth grader. I could see someone say, give me 5 different ways to go at this theme for the book Where the Red Fern Grows, and then boom, it'll shoot out 5 different lines of thinking, and then a student can look at one of them and go, okay, I'm going to go with this. So that I could see as an ethical use of ChatGPT. Some people would say that's helping with the content creation, but and that's why these policy guidelines are so hard. Like you did say, they have to evolve. I agree. They have to be evolving almost by the month, because as I think 5 years from now, I think everyone's going to be like, well, yeah, that's not plagiarism, that's not cheating, that's how you do it. We're gonna use this tool to help us, create ideas in a more efficient manner. So yeah, thank you very much for coming up with this policy. But I think that on the teacher end, I've talked with a lot of educators about creative uses, especially regarding assessment. It's amazing how you can just have students grade ChatGPT responses, and there's so many creative ways that could be used. I would just recommend massive teacher collaboration, not just within Wakefield, but I would really recommend just shooting out. There should be an AI, just 100 schools, history teachers, math teachers within fields talking about this, because
yeah, and that reminds me, Kevin, of just one quick thing I wanted to add is that that's something that we're trying to build into PD. So, for example, we're going to have some choice PD for teachers on November 5th, and I know we're trying to offer a workshop around AI and effective use and how it's being used other places and by other teachers. And additionally, I know Karen and I had discussed potentially getting a presenter for Parent University around this. So we want the education, because it's constantly evolving, to be constantly evolving. But one thing, and then I'll be quiet because I know you have a lot of school improvement plans to get through, is that the presenter, Greg Kowalik, who we tried to get for November 5th, but of course he's already booked, had said his daughter had to write something that was to do with, she drew a picture of a pair of sneakers and they were shaped like South America, and she had to talk about her journey. So he helped her write a prompt and said, can you ask me some questions that would help me think about how to write about the journey of my sneakers? And all AI did was give her a bunch of questions that then prompted her thinking, and she's like, oh, I really like that second question, and now I have an idea for what to write. So I think, like you said, those are the uses that are going to be enormously helpful. So thank you.
I would say thank you, sort of echo Kevin, thank you for putting this together. I really appreciate sort of how you call out sort of the biases that are inherent from AI. Just knowing that you need to know the sources that it's drawing from for where your results are coming from. I appreciate that you sort of highlight that, and that to sort of, as Dr. Lyon said, you don't close off the door. You sort of create a framework for, here are some constructive uses, and then I'm interested to see how people will cite AI. Like, what does that actual citation look like? So that'd be interesting. Did I miss it in the documentation? Did you give an example of how to cite AI or what you envision?
I did not, but I know the citation tools that we have students use to help them cite anything now include for them, if they used AI, it asks them prompts and then it creates a citation for them so they can have an example right there of how to do the citation. And I haven't myself cited AI yet, so I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I'm also interested to see, because I'm sure they'll be using it this year and including those citations.
That'd be cool. I do, yeah. I would also just like caution, like I think there's a lot of sort of nervousness about AI, and I think it's like any other tool that sort of we have at our disposal. You have to know how to use it, and so part of using AI is writing instructive prompts and sort of constructive prompts, things that actually get you to the answer and not just sort of at the surface, but get into deeper meaning, and that'll go to the student's style. You'll be able to sort of pick out when they're just grabbing the first answer that comes up, or was that prompt like well crafted? So I think there's plenty of space to sort of expand this, and I think we're going to learn a lot more. So it's good to sort of put roadblocks or sort of guidelines in place early on and make them available for students and for families. So yeah, thank you for the work.
Thank you
No
so
problem.
much.
No problem.
Good night,
Thank
Margaret.
See ya.
So AI is I'm just going to say it's an amazing tool, and the power is unbelievable. The ability to create translations in hard to translate languages is amazing. You know, you can translate to Farsi, you can translate to any number of different languages. Obviously, it's not perfect, but it puts you in the game. It also is kind of improving in the area of math and science, right? And also writing code. And so, lot more to follow there. So, next up, we'd like to invite the principals to talk about school improvement plans.
We can start with Shannon,
Great,
and then the elementary principals will be together.
you're up, Shannon.
All right, can everyone hear me?
We can.
Okay. So, bring it up. Okay. So Doyle this year is continuing some of the work from last year that we started, but kind of like the next phase of things for the first area with quality teaching. So if you can remember last year, we took on the age-based classrooms and started the Hegarty program. So we are continuing to implement that program, but now we are going to really look at how it's affecting our students and tracking student progress. And we're going to do this by, we did not use some of the assessments that Hegarty has in the manuals this year. We didn't use them last year, so we are going to start using those. So we have some common assessments to really track a select group of students now that we're continuing with our age-based classrooms. So we're going to do that through our PLCs and ILT meetings. And we're going to look at collaborating to complete these assessments together at certain times throughout the year. For the rich and challenging curriculum, our goal, we're continuing this as well. Last year we did a curriculum review around different programs that different preschool populations use. And what we found is that we would like to stay with what we're using, but add additional resources to really enrich our curriculum that we're using for our theme-based curriculum and our scope and sequence that we've created. So we are looking to enhance the literacy portion of things by purchasing materials, rich, more diverse books and whatnot to go along with our themes for the teachers. Also, we are going to identify certain lessons that are going to happen in all of the classrooms. So we have some continuity in all of our classrooms at Doyle and the 2 classrooms at the Woodville. And then for our third one, for individualized student learning, we're really going to dig deep into the new IEP and how it relates to each individual student and writing new goals, accommodations, and modifications. There's a shift happening, and all the teachers really want to dig deep and do some of that work. So we're a little different, trying to align with the elementary and continue some of the work that we did last year. you get all that?
Great, yeah.
We did.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Shannon, thank you so much.
Okay.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated. And so, elementary? I love when all you guys present together.
We're a team.
You should get them rings.
We're going to sashes.
Yeah.
So for school improvement plan, I'm just going to do a little bit of an intro. And actually, Shannon used the word a lot that I'm using as well, is this idea of a continuation. Just thinking about setting up our goals. You know, we always have a million goals that we're trying to do each school year, but the school improvement plan allows us to highlight 3 that we really want to prioritize. And we've found over the course of, this is my 7th year here, just kind of thinking about, well, we have goals that kind of go for 1 year, and then the next year we have new goals, next year we have new goals. It often feels like we're not really kind of having a continuous flow of growth and a chance for improvement. So we've really kind of moved toward looking at the goals, continuing the goals, and updating the action steps. So you're going to hear a little bit about that. It also allows us to kind of formulate the PD, the professional development, that goes along with that. So we have professional development that's going to align with the goals that we have this year, but also some of the professional development that started last year is going to inform the goals that we're working on this year. So we just want to make it really cohesive. And with that, I'm going to turn it over for goal 1. Oh, all the way down.
Pass it this way. All right, thank you, Tiffany. So, yeah, I'll speak a little bit about our quality teaching goal, our first goal. So like Tiffany said, this isn't a new goal. The goal itself is the same as last year, and we are continuing to incorporate the shifts in literacy instruction to include practices supported by the science of reading. That's our goal. And then the action steps this year. So last year was a lot of learning, a lot of professional development related to this, a lot of focus on our reading specialists becoming experts in this area, and that's gone really, really well. And this year we're pushing more into the classrooms. So that's kind of how these action steps are a little bit different. So our first action step is that we want our classroom teachers to be utilizing the structures from our professional development last year, like Tiffany just mentioned, with the Hill for Literacy, about how to work with small groups of students on foundational literacy skills. Take that kind of lesson structure and make that happen in the classroom. So either during their What I Need block, they would be working with a small group of students on a specific skill or strategy, or in their actual foundational skills block. And actually, this year, the 4 of us all made an effort to build schedules that had those 2 blocks linked together, so back to back in the school day, so that that small group work could kind of spill from foundational skills into the What I Need block. Because that just made so much sense for this work that's really, really important to help kids learn to read and write. And then in addition to that, we're going to support teachers to use decodable texts in their small group work, and also support them to continue to balance the lessons and activities that are happening during the foundational skills block. Heard Shannon talk about Heggerty, foundations, and also this new kind of lesson structure. The way that we will monitor our progress toward this is by taking a close look at our DIBELS data. So another kind of important part of this goal is our process for reviewing data as a school will be a little bit different this year. Myself, some other district leaders, and some teachers from all 4 schools were part of a group that worked in a grant throughout last year to improve our system in literacy for how we support multiple tiers of instruction. And this process for how we look at data as a whole school first will be new and improved this year. and will support this goal. And also importantly, lastly, we're really hoping to get into a good routine and rhythm of walking through classrooms ourselves, but also with teachers and our reading specialists and our teachers to see that these things are happening, and if not, support everyone who needs support to make sure that they do happen in the classroom. So that's goal 1.
So goal 2, again, builds on last year and some of the work that Tiffany had explained at the outset of this presentation. So we're really looking at kind of the access to high quality instructional materials, making sure that teachers have access to that material, but also that students have it in front of them as well, and that they're experiencing that every day. So for us, we're also looking at monitoring student progress through a variety of assessments and using the tools that are kind of embedded in these programs with a level of integrity, right? So we want to make sure that we aren't using AI to create our own assessments. We're using kind of the embedded ones that are in it to make sure that, you know, students are having a similar experience across classrooms. Because one of the things we realized pre-pandemic and coming out of it was, you know, the experience that students were having, not just at Woodville, but the students that they were having at Woodville, Walton, Dolbear, and Greenwood. And are those experiences similar across the board? So that's something that we've worked really hard to provide, and I feel like this reset with this EL curriculum has allowed us to do that with reading and writing. I think that teachers are excited about it, students are excited about it, and it feels good coming into this second year. Our action steps are really around kind of knowing the resources, implementing it, like I said, with integrity, and utilizing the protocols that are embedded. So those are really the action steps that we're looking at. And then in terms of like the data and the evidence we're exploring, it's again, some of what Brian said with the DIBELS, is that kind of giving us, you know, a true snapshot of how students are performing. Are we able to utilize that information to then move students into intervention if they need it, or to talk about Tier 1 instruction more in the classroom as we kind of get into Year 2? We're also looking, again, at the scope and sequence, making sure that we're aligned across the board. Brian mentioned this as well. We are looking at kind of getting on the same page in terms of learning walks, seeing kind of school to school, how those experiences are similar, and if they are different, kind of thinking about how they could be more similar. And then we also have an EL leadership team that meets on the half days and are able to provide some level of PD for the grade level staff. And we're really excited by this work. I feel like, you know, when I first came on as a principal, we definitely were in different spots. Right now, we can all go to the scope and sequence. We can talk about classrooms. We can talk about lessons, you know, and we're all in a very similar place. So I can go into a Woodville classroom in 3rd grade on September 24th, and I know that if I go into a Dolbear classroom in 3rd grade on the 24th, they're somewhere very close to where we are. And that's really exciting for us and really exciting for the students of Wakefield.
Especially great when you have a principal in one school and his kids go to another school. So when he comes home, I have some validity and be able to say, I know what you're supposed to be working on right now. Let's get working on that. So the third goal for individualized student learning is all about differentiated learning experiences for students through thoughtfully planned interventions and accelerated learning opportunities. And so, as Tiffany said at the beginning, you know, our goals have stayed same, but our action steps have evolved according to where we are at. So when we talk about our, you know, our accelerated learning opportunities, our intervention for students differentiating their experiences for learning, our action steps are around what we have learned through our professional development over the last couple of years. And Brian had talked about in the first bucket, for lack of a better phrase, our first goal, the work that we have done with Hillful Literacy over this past year. Now, is really focusing on providing systematic literacy intervention for students that are targeted, you know, scientific approach, really digging in to help build stronger foundational skills for our readers. And to do that, we also, as an administrative team working with our curriculum leaders, took feedback from teachers around what were challenges that they were running into to provide small group instructional opportunities for their students. And of course, time is always one of the obstacles. So we intentionally build schedules, as Brian talked about, for K1 and 2 classrooms, where foundational skills, where they're getting their phonemic awareness, their phonics instruction, is also tied to the what I need block or the win block, which is where the intervention's happening. So what that does is it affords the teacher an opportunity to provide some targeted small group instruction that's tied to what they were just learning through their foundational skills block. It also gives a little bit of wiggle room in time for that to kind of flow into one another. We also, as Brian talked about in the work that he and others did last year through the grant through the state with the MTSS grant, was to look at our data team structure, refine it, create a much more deliberate approach using data. We're very fortunate that the district has invested in data programming that is objective, that pumps out information that allows us to digest it at a quicker rate through iReady, through Dibbles, and allows us to be in a position to be very targeted with our intervention approaches with our students. So we're starting to see the fruits of that labor. We're excited to begin this work this year. We know that our teachers are working extremely hard to meet the needs of their students, and we're excited to see what this year brings. So that data and evidence, of course, is our iReady, our Dibbles assessment data, our ST Math data, as well as Brian, Tiffany, and Matt talked about learning walks, because there's no better teacher than teachers, and walking with teachers and doing work with them so they can get a chance to get eyes on each other.
And then
Question?
can I
Yes.
add just one other thing?
You can add
I was
two
thinking
things.
as you were talking and Brian was talking about the schedule, something else we were able to do this year is, we added an additional 5 instructional minutes on the school day. And the question was, where should that go? What should it be used for? And it's going to sound a little strange, strange math here, but we used that 5 extra minutes to expand the win block by 10 minutes. We found another 5 minutes somewhere. So that actually is something we had heard directly from teachers. I don't have enough time to meet with my groups. I don't have enough time to meet with my students. Having more win time would be really important to us. So we were able to extend that from a 30-minute block to a 40-minute block daily. So then with the K-2, hooking it up to the foundational skills, that gives a nice big chunk of time to be able to do Haggerty, to be able to do foundations, and then to do small group instruction as well.
A lot of information. Questions?
That's great. Before we start with questions, can you share a little bit more about data teams and kind of intervention?
So one of the things that we, as a team, the 4 of us working with our humanities coordinator, Val Dryden, and our STEM coordinator, Marguerite, we really looked at how we can use the data that we're gathering and use the structures in that data. iReady breaks information into buckets that allow us to determine what students need in any particular given domain. And that also allows us to go back with this curriculum team to dig into the resources that are available to us. So for example, a couple of years ago, we invested for math, we invested in the Bridges program, which is a standards-aligned, research-based program that our math interventionists across the 4 schools begin to use and do small group instruction, direct instruction that is guided by the iReady testing that we're doing, what are the domains the students are struggling with. The same thing with Dibbles is a literacy screener. It also pumps out information that allows us to understand what are the targeted areas of focus. This past year, our reading specialists did a lot of work with Health Literacy. They're doing work again this year about how to build structures and intervention lessons that meet the individual needs of students and target these exact areas that they're focused on. The teachers are then going to begin to do that work. So it's kind of works under an umbrella, right? So our students, setting aside our students that are identified through special education that have specific targeted modified curriculum or targeted interventions with a special education teacher. Our interventionists are working with our curriculum team and principals to identify those tiers of students, gen ed students that are struggling in a specific area so we can target those areas and provide them support. The data team structure that we're evolving and that we're actually getting excited to roll out is we're meeting as a team prior to meeting with teachers to identify which students are struggling. For example, if you have a Dibbles report and a student's at below or well below, it's a student that we want to begin to provide targeted intervention for. So we're going to use that data, meet with the interventionist, figure out which students that fall into that bucket. And then when we meet with the teaching team, we're looking at students that may not be targeted for that literacy interventionist or that reading specialist or that math interventionist, but rather how that teacher can support that small group of students in their class during WIN. And as Tiffany said, by expanding on our WIN time, it provides an investment of time and space for teachers to work with those students. So that's a little bit, if I left anything out, please chime in.
I think too, you capitalized on the after-school meeting times.
Yes.
Time is always a challenge to get all the teachers together. So if you want to, because I think that was a big decision.
Yeah, so one of the things we also did was, again, finding time in the school day is always tricky. Can speak to that at Dolby, it was always a tricky thing. So we shifted this year. In fact, I believe next week is the first of our Wednesday meetings that we've dedicated. So our contractual Wednesday meetings are the after-school time that teachers have, that hour. We've dedicated 3 times out of the year, there'll be 2 different cycles. So one that's focused on ELA, one that's going to be focused on math. During that time, teachers are going to dig into the data that they have as a grade level, collaborate with the support of our interventionists, with the support of our curriculum team, to dig into the data and identify what students are struggling with. And they're going to be using the resources that through iReady, through Dibbles, the resources that we have available to us to figure out how they're going to target. We're very excited about it. It's new. It's definitely going to take a little bit of a learning curve at times, but we're excited that we're able to create this space where teachers are going to be able to collaborate with each other, collaborate with our curriculum team and our administration and interventionists to figure out how best to support their kiddos.
And I think that, well done. You really got going on a roll there.
I'll put a microphone in front of me.
As TJ was talking, I just kept coming back in my head to, I think the biggest shift with the data team structure is that what TJ just described is now fairly consistent across the 4 of our schools. So when we get into a room not tomorrow, but next Wednesday with all of our staffs, we will use the same protocol to go through the same data set. We will organize the student data the same way. We have created guideposts to identify when students would benefit from this level of support and when students need, significantly more support. So that to me is the key improvement this year, is that process really becoming consistent and better.
I love seeing the improved collaboration between the schools. I mean, there's so much brain power just in each school, but to bring it all together and be able to do things consistently in ways that help each other, I think is awesome. Karen, my favorite question to you every time we talk about data, have we made any improvements this year on
The iReady data.
yeah, like getting data available electronically? I ask this question every year because data never, half the time it either gets crumpled in a bag and never comes out or doesn't make it home.
I made that a priority. I said we cannot go to another school committee meeting and have this figured out. So we've all been on it. Aaron Bailey, I know, has looked into it. Val Dryden has looked into it, and they figured out a way to present that to parents digitally. So I don't have all the details to explain to you
So we
right
may
now.
have some good news this year.
I think we're making some good progress, but yeah.
We actually ran a test because one of TJ's children, two of them now, but one of them that took the assessment is at my school. We set up his account. He was able to access it. So there is a way to do it.
Yeah.
So we ran that test and it worked.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot you guys brainstormed too.
Yeah.
It's a priority for this year for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One of the things that, I want to add, we talk about as a team, the investment that the town has made, the investment that our school committee has made in building structures. This is an example of that. We think about, a time when budgets are being slashed, when unfortunately, school committees and districts and superintendents are making difficult decisions. We've been able to maintain what we have built, and this is why it's so important to continue that work, because without the structures that we have in place, our curriculum coordinators, our administrative teams, the resources that we have, we're not able to make these shifts and to make these opportunities for students. So just want to continue to applaud that and continue to advocate that, for everyone listening, that, your investment in this work is really paying off.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure if you were actually done and ready for questions. But Pete was excited. So
Steve, I
there
heard
you
you.
go.
We already started.
Melissa?
So I had one really quick question. A lot of the action steps involve teachers, and some of the data and evidence doesn't necessarily include teacher response and teacher input. I was just curious if that was something that you guys thought about putting as part of your data and evidence, or if the teachers have enough on their plate that they don't want to have to add anything.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Melissa?
Yeah.
Do you mean like teacher input into the process?
Just data and evidence when you, at the end of the year, when you come back to us and you say, here's what we did, here's our ST math data, here's our DIBELS data. I'd love to hear how teachers actually went about applying the systemic and explicit structure that they learned. Like I'd love some color around that and understanding that a little bit more, making sure that it's something that's accessible.
Yeah, I think we can obviously come back, and
Yeah.
talk more about that. I think one of the things that we all do really well is listen to our staffs, and kind of listen to what's going on day to day. I think with the prior data team structures we had in place, a lot of it came down to kind of the numbers, but there was also some teacher input, in terms of like, I feel this student could benefit. I think by creating these guideposts, it has changed that conversation, right? So now that will be consistent amongst our schools. But I think that what it's going to allow, sort of like what I referenced before, is I think our data team meetings will take on more of like that tier 1 conversation, right? Like what's happening within the classroom, what's happening for students that might be, maybe slightly below and need a boost here or there. How are we organizing small groups within the classroom? And I think that's where teacher voice will come into these conversations in a bigger and better way. I think a lot of times it was, I can speak for my meetings and my meetings only. There was a lot of like advocating, for my student. My student needs this. You know what I mean? My student needs this more than your student, TJ. Or whatever. The case may be. I think the conversation looks a little different now, and it's more based on like what teachers can do in their own classroom. Mm-hmm. And I think that for me is going to be a great next step at our schools.
That's great. And I did have another question that popped up because I have to ask. 40-minute win time is great. We talked a lot about intervention and boosting kids that need a boost. What are you going to do with the other kids?
I knew that was going to be your question.
It's not a conversation. It's not the first time we've had the conversation.
And I was thinking about it actually while TJ was talking during one of his spiels. Because we're changing the structure of the data team meetings, and it is more of this tier 1 conversation, like Matt just mentioned, that does bring in more room for this to be a meeting where we're talking about really all kids and what all kids need versus we're really focusing on the highest need groups, or we're focusing on the kids who are in the red or the kids in the yellow. There are going to be all these other kids that are on, that have the data and be like, wow, well, this student already has it. Okay, what are we going to do for these students? So I actually feel like this opens up a lot more opportunities to talk about that acceleration, to talk about kind of that, how do we boost kids who are already where they need to be and continue their growth. So I'm really excited to see how this plays out. I think it's really going to be a helpful structure.
I would love that. I think that's great. Thanks.
I had a question, I was trying to think about, kids take the DIBELS and take the iReady, and then you get data, and I'm thinking that it sort of points to a moment in time that already happened. How do you reintroduce those concepts that they maybe needed to get a stronger grasp on in future curriculum? Like, because they have lesson plans that are coming up. You're not going back to what that classroom learned, 2 weeks ago. They're moving forward. How do you introduce those concepts again and help those kids get that with future content?
I can answer that. So when a student takes the DIBELS assessment, which all of our students just did, they'll be kind of categorized according to risk levels, basically. And with students who are at the highest risk levels, we will do a follow-up diagnostic assessment to learn more about where their specific shortcomings or where the areas that they need more help with are specifically. And we will continue to assess them continuously while they're in the intervention groups. So we'll have more and more data coming in for the students who need the most support. Does that answer the question you were asking? No.
No. how do you get them that content that they need, like sort of reintroduced or a strong, need to be re-exposed to when maybe the class has moved on to a different like area of content? Like I'm just curious how that happens.
If there are gaps, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
if there's,
mean, so I think that's what's happening during win time, during
Okay.
the small group times. It might be happening with an interventionist, it might be happening with the reading specialist, it might be happening with the classroom teacher. But that's kind of the idea that the win time, it's not new tier 1 content for everyone that's being introduced. It's that chance to kind of go back and dig into those other areas.
Right.
Not that people don't find other times to do it as well, but I think
Sure.
that's primarily, and I think that's another reason why people were kind of crying out for expanding the win time, because people could see the need for
Yeah.
it.
And Steve, the work that was done last year that the principals referenced, we've been working so hard to get tier 1 aligned, and then there was a heavy focus last year on getting tier 2, which is our intervention model, aligned. Because again, that was another area of, I don't want to say disconnect, it was just not aligned across the district in terms of a student first of all, how a student gets referred to, say, reading intervention. What's being used, when do they exit, when do they enter? So a ton of focus last year went into that. And if a student is referred for work with a reading specialist or a math interventionist, what are the skills that are being targeted? How is that taught? What are the resources that are going to be used to reteach or get the student up to speed? So I think we're in a much better place. That's what, when they were referencing the Hill for Literacy with the reading specialists, they're all now aligned in their approach to intervention across all 4 schools. Mentioned the Bridges program with the math intervention. So those are all, so in terms of reteaching, those would be, the areas for that to happen. And then I think that there might be some skills where a student might be considered meeting grade level, but maybe it's kind of like noted by the teacher, all right, they're a little bit weaker in that area. That will likely flush out in future lessons, and I'm not too worried about that right now. Does that?
Yeah, I think
Does that
sometimes
answer?
we make assumptions that people may know other things right in the background. Like WIN is one of the few times in the school day where there isn't like a set curriculum or structure. So like there isn't like the scope and sequence, where we're following lock and key with another school or teachers in side-by-side classes, right? They kind of look at the individuals in their classroom, their needs, and then kind of group within there. If you remember back a few years ago when we kind of flexed our WIN time at Woodville, and you experienced that as a parent, being able to move students across the classrooms, I envision that there will be opportunity for some movement, which again is something else I'm excited about.
Also,
Great.
Stephen, to give you an example too, so working with our STEM coordinators and our interventionists, we look at what the entry points are. So for example, if we're moving into a specific topic, what we'll look at is within that domain, what are the prerequisite skills that you need in order to access that? And the intervention will be targeted towards that. So it allows some work and some foundational work before the kids are getting into. So they are kind of working parallel to some extent to
Oh,
what they're
that's great.
seeing in
So
during
it's
the
not
Tier 1.
it's not just for sort of catching up or growing in a lapse. It's to know what's coming ahead.
Correct. It
That's great.
tries to work in dual, right?
Yeah.
So targeting the area, but also what is the entry point to allow them to access, because again, we're not doing the intervention during their math block, right?
Right.
Where, they're still accessing the tier 1, that daily lesson. It's just during the WIN block, they may be doing some work that's going to help them make more sense or access that tier 1 instruction more effectively.
It's great. Thank you. Eileen?
I'm going to ask a question similar to Melissa's. So the kids who might possibly already be there, they're ready to move on, they're
Yeah.
ready to go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
In that WIN block, are they allowed to, like that group will be able to move on, whether that's in a math
Yeah,
or
I
STEM
think
or whatever?
there's a couple different things, Eileen, that they
Yeah.
might be doing. So there's some self-paced things, specifically for our accelerated students that there may be some more targeted independent work, for lack of a better phrase. They might be still working with the teacher at different points. They might be doing some ST math work, for example, where it can be
They can
tailored
move
more
on.
to
Yeah.
help accelerate within the domain. So the thing we want to be very careful about, this is not like the old school, we'll give you more because you got it already.
Right.
It's more about digging deeper and really trying to expanding the thought process around a specific domain. iReady also throws out some suggestions from the diagnostic that they're taking. So again, as we peel back these resources, we're learning more and more what's available, which is great. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it's like each year I feel like we, again, peel another layer back and find out something new that we can
Right.
integrate. with our teachers and our students.
Okay. And then at the end of the year, you guys come in and we talk, right? This is,
Yeah, we
I
do
feel like
that.
we were just.
I know, we did
So,
the update, yeah.
like,
we were just-
we'll talk about this again at the end of the year,
Yes.
and then basically how things were, like, how tools
How
were
to go.
implemented and how to go and everything, because we're still kind of very much in the process of learning all of these things.
It
Okay.
always feels like the cycle never stops.
I really feel like we were just here
We were just
together.
They were just,
Okay.
yeah, they were just here in June for
Yeah.
an update for how the year
Felt
went,
like a
yeah.
week ago,
Yeah.
so, okay. That was all I had.
I would say again, and the last time you were here, I think I sort of expressed how appreciative I am of the collaboration and how well you work together. I assume you all like each other.
We do.
But,
We do.
They're talking about getting sashes
it's
together,
good.
yeah.
So it's great. Keep up the good work and appreciate everything you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Meg, did you and Joe Mulaney want to present together? Are you doing, I didn't know, because I know there was some. I know, Joe, I hope Joe's still there.
If he's not still there.
I just know that there was some carryover.
There
I
we go.
guess I'll-
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
If it works, if it doesn't, that's totally fine.
Really well. And I apologize, I left all my printouts by my front door, so I'm looking at ours
Oh,
up
do you
on my
want to look at my
phone.
computer, Meg? Would that
Oh,
help?
no, it's good, I have it
Sure?
here.
Okay.
But I don't know what you might think I'd be doing on my phone, but that's what I'm doing
You're good,
right
I
now.
couldn't see.
So Joe, I'm here, and maybe I'll go through our first one, and then you can do yours since they're quite aligned.
Yep, I can be brief. I just wanted, before we get started, shout out our two high school student reps that are patiently waiting their turn to share all the good news. Hang in there, guys, okay? We're almost there.
All right. And Eileen, I'm glad you said that because I too was sitting back here like I feel like we just talked about these like a deja
Yeah.
vu, but which is good because I think similar to the elementary school and the high school at the Galvin we're really building on goals year after year, so it will sound a little bit familiar kind of by design. And then we do work very closely with our colleagues at the high school, so they'll also we'll just go kind of one after another because they're very aligned. So our quality teaching goal continues to be in both schools around getting teachers into each other's classrooms, aligning across within departments and also across departments on quality teaching. So what we found last year is that this happened in a really thoughtful and rigorous way in departments where they felt really equipped to do it, and then in others they didn't feel like they had quite the space or structure to do it at the same level. So our goal this year is to just improve the quality of those experiences across departments. And I know we've also recently been talking about getting into other buildings, so getting into the high school, aligning instruction across, not just across all the classrooms at the Galvin, but looking in the classrooms at the upper levels as well. And so our specific action steps and evidence are all aligned with continuing to improve the quality of those experiences for educators, which then would improve the quality of what we're seeing across the building. And Joe, if you want to follow up with the high school.
Yeah, I would just say that I think at the high school, and I know talking to folks at Galvin as well, it's really about tapping into a lot of what teaches their expertise and their experiences, and there's a lot there that we can value. And so we're really, last year and this year, pushing the teacher collaboration to see that in goal 1 and really in goal 2. And, you know, we see that we hope that there, I think Meg put it well, last year in some areas it was done really well. Folks felt comfortable. I think that hopefully folks will feel more comfortable, and we're going to put some more structure get in and get a look at what other people are doing so they can gain some knowledge and feel good about even what they're doing. So yeah, I think it's important, and I think if you look at action step 4, you know, really for us that's an important piece because we want to acknowledge the work that teachers are doing, because that's really a celebration of steps 1, 2, and 3 when you look at the action steps.
Yeah, and Amy was over at the Galvin the other day as we were starting to plan the November 5th PD that I think Margaret referenced, a few people have referenced here tonight, and is being held at the high school. but it's both the Galvin and the high school staffs together. So we're collaborating to create sessions, or to create the space for teachers and staff members to either create sessions or bring in outside experts, so that teachers have choice in what they're experiencing that day. And that's building on something that felt really successful at our individual schools, and kind of just making a super day of both teams together, which also is operationally helpful because the election will be happening at the Galvin that day. So it was kind of a way to really capitalize on something that had to happen in terms of space, but then also linked to this idea of teachers leading teachers.
I think it helps with alignment too. I mean, it was mentioned earlier in a couple of different schools around alignment. It's really something that we're trying to do, is align with the middle school, and I think kind of it goes the other way as well. And so I think that just helps build on that too.
Awesome. So in goal 2, enrich and challenging curriculum, we might have branched a little bit differently. Although actually I think in speaking with Amy last week, there is a lot of parallels here, but we are looking at bringing back some practices that were much stronger, I think, before COVID, and then sort of got lost in the mix of everything around comparable assessment. So ensuring, not unlike what the elementary school principals talked about, ensuring that there's consistency across classrooms, not lockstep, day by day consistency, but just are we measuring the same things if your child is on team G and if they're on team H, and are we getting similar data so that we can sort of assess how we're doing across the school and how our students are doing in a way that's comparable. So we already have some of the same aligned assessments, but we're looking within curriculum and within teacher teams, like how are we looking at not the exact same thing, but we're looking at something that is comparable, so that we're giving a more consistent experience to students. And we started in on this with our ILT last week, I think, or the week prior, by starting and getting reacquainted with looking at data through a protocol, and just starting to draw conclusions from that and what that might look like across different PLCs. So that's something that I think was a very strong practice in most schools and districts for a very long time, and it's one of those things that lost focus, I think, during COVID years and right after. So it's something that we're trying to revive within our PLCs.
Yeah, and I think we're in the same boat. I think it's a little bit more micro level though. When you think of high school, it's a little bit different than the other schools because it's departments by subject area, and then within the departments you have different subjects. So for science, you have 3 or 4 teachers that are bio, and then chemistry and physics and so forth. And so it's the work that takes place within PLCs. Again, similar sort of thing where we're looking at assessments, and we're looking to develop more kind of common assessments, if you will, where we can, so that data can be collected, and we can talk about teaching practices and maybe what can be done differently. And I think for us, an action step number 3 is an important one for us, and it's probably going to take a while to get there, but it's the communicating out to parents, right? Where at the high school level, a lot of communication around progress takes place with progress reports and grading. So it's kind of middle of the quarter and end of quarter, and then so forth. And so this is something where some of our departments have tinkered with letting parents know and reaching out to them as the quarter goes along, which is great practice, but it's a lot of work when you've got 75 to 100 students that you're trying to do this with. But it's a goal that we hope to kind of push, and we can get people to work on it in that area.
And for goal 3, I think this might be, having just heard from the elementary school, and this will be where it's very evident that the middle school acts in a lot of ways as a bridge between the elementary grades and the high school grades. But our goal continues to focus on our WIN block, which was new to us last year, which we actually stole from the elementary model and from a lot of visits to the elementary schools, trying to replicate a lot of what they just very eloquently described to you in the more middle school structure, which can't be exactly the same just because our structures are different, and but we're trying to get at some of the very same things that that the elementary principals described. So we were able last year, we were very excited to have the operational pieces fall into place and to be able to run those blocks. And then this year, we're really focusing on getting some of the practices that were very strong in some grades and replicating them in others that had different models, and just making sure that everything has the right fit for the students in that grade and for the team models in each grade. So the action steps don't look, the titles aren't different, but what's happening kind of underneath the surface is a little bit different this year, because we're going beyond just let's make it run, let's make sure we can put all the kids in places that make sense, and getting into just being more thoughtful about, I think Kara was talking a bit about exit and entry criteria, and how do we know we made a difference, and what does that look like, and how are we shifting kids from quarter to quarter. And then I think at the high school, I think you guys are continuing to look at the advisory block and at other more personalized spaces for students.
Yeah, high school, we don't have the wind block that the other folks have, but the area for this goal is really around student support. Our student support looks different than a wind block, and so we're pushing to kind of really have teachers develop instructional strategies and continue to develop them that address individual student needs, both social, emotional, and academic. And then also we have an intervention program where we work to identify students that may need academic support or may need social emotional support, or they just have challenges in their lives, and we try to figure out where the resources are in the building that we can address that. And so things like our adjustment counselors, our bridge program, those are a couple off the top of my head where we would work to help students to kind of get back on track. And then the advisory, it's essentially once a month. It's not like a wind block, because it's kind of a 30-minute block where we can get students together in their homeroom and focus on maybe one area that's around mental health, for instance, or another thing. We have a NEASC visit coming up this year, and so it's an opportunity to try to get students on the same page and to get to build connections with them a little bit more. But it's all about the student support for our individualized student learning.
Any questions?
I'm just curious how the 5 minutes got incorporated at the middle and high level
Yeah.
this year.
So at the middle school, we added the 5 minutes of instructional time at the front end of the day. If you're familiar with the kind of the starting operations of the building, that the bell rings at 7:40 to allow kids in the building, and then it didn't ring until 7:50 to start homeroom. And so the most natural place to kind of put that 5 minutes was at the 7:45 mark. So we just start instruction earlier than we used to, and kind of cut down on that passing time right there at the start of the day. But in terms of where it kind of is visible throughout the day, we added it to the middle periods in the day, because those are the ones that are either students are traveling the furthest distances, or they're just the greatest amount of transition. So trying to, and we have a situation where we have 3 minutes of passing time, but an enormous building. So trying to make it a little bit more true to form in terms of students getting into class, getting instruction started right in those kind of the heart of the day there.
So at the high school level, technically the 5 minutes was tagged onto the end of the day. So we have a 2:10 release time rather than a 2:05 release time. And we have 6 blocks each day. We added 1 minute to each block of the day, and we reduced our homeroom by 1 minute. So we have the 5 minutes plus the 1. So that's how we have spread that time out.
I think probably similar to the high school, I would imagine. It's difficult. We toyed with the idea of, it would be great to add to wind block. It would be great, but that happens at different times for different grades, and the machine of the building gets disrupted if you add to one spot but not another. So it made more sense, it sounds like, for both buildings to kind of to spread it across multiple periods.
Yeah, I would say to add to that, Meg, is that for us, we kind of look at kind of the equity around each class. We wouldn't want to give one block 5 more minutes, because not all we have a rotating block, and so it can get a little bit messy. And so we try to have each teacher spend an equal amount of time, if we can, with students over the course of an academic quarter.
Thank you.
At this point, is there a systematic system for the learning blocks for teachers to be observing classes? Like, is it kind of a thing where it's like, okay, like we can match your duty with this prep for that to happen? Or is there like kind of a set schedule where like teachers know that on this day they're going to be walking into observe this class?
Yeah, so where it was strongest, where we're trying to replicate, I'll use Margaret's teams as an example. So Margaret, our ELA coordinator, worked each quarter to design a learning walk schedule for each of her PLCs, so each of her grade level teams of teachers, to get into other ELA classrooms across the building. So she kind of created the schedule, and then she and a teacher leader, one of our liaisons, Dave Missouri, created kind of the note-taking sheet and then the debrief structure. And it was really cool because they were able to then give feedback to the teachers that they had visited, so it wasn't just someone came through and benefited from that visit. They also gave some structured feedback that was part of the form that they filled out at the end, both verbally and in writing. So that was kind of an example of the most structured kind of PLC approach. And then we also had some PLCs who were like, oh, it's this day, instead of PLC, fan out and like go see classrooms. And that was also great in a lot of ways because people could just kind of select where they went. What we're trying to do this year is hold ourselves accountable for doing more of the more structured example of something kind of like that Margaret and Dave led, so that we know that everybody in the process is getting the benefit of either giving feedback, receiving feedback, being in a classroom. Dave, who's one of our teacher leaders, also is trying to structure kind of like a 2.0 for those who are super comfortable with the process. Like maybe I'm going to take my planning block and I'm going to go spend the period with the 5th grade teacher who teaches ELA, and I'm going to like co-teach with them and learn from them. And so there's a cohort of teachers who are really excited about that work. So I think maybe the shorter answer is that there are some of those structures that are a little bit more formalized we're trying to replicate across other teams because they were really teacher developed and felt meaningful to those teachers. And so those who might feel a little bit more reluctant or maybe need a little bit more structure around it would benefit from that.
Yeah, we're kind of in the same boat. I would say that there's some departments are pretty structured. We have an ILT where we have department leaders and also the curriculum coordinators such as Margaret and Jay Pavey and such. And so we are leaving it to department leaders to kind of sort through that. For the most part, they're developing schedules and people are working into the classrooms that way. But we're also kind of taking a hands-off approach to a certain extent so that, as we've heard from department leaders, that some of their folks prefer kind of a different approach. So we're still going to go through a process. We're looking for everyone to kind of participate in this, and it's going to happen. But there may not be schedules in place just yet across the entire school.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So maybe in another meeting, Chris, you can kind of add a little teacher perspective on what we're reporting. I don't want to give you notice, right? And so if that's okay, give that some thought. And so we were talking before this meeting just about different ways to kind of include and get different perspectives, right? So we can talk more. But I'd like to take a break from the agenda. And I think we missed an opportunity in the beginning to hear from students.
And I will take that on my shoulders. That is, I apologize. In setting up the agenda, I don't know how I missed it. But yeah,
It's because this is the first one, really, right? No. Oh, I wasn't here the last one.
I was sitting through student improvement and looking down, and I'm like, I know they're here for a reason. And
I made a huge note to myself that now that they're back, I'll just put them right on.
Yeah.
And they'll always be on there.
Awesome.
so, would you like to introduce yourselves and share a bit of what's going on?
I'm Ala. I'm a junior in high school. I have an older brother and a younger sister.
I'm Maya, and I'm also a junior, and I have an older brother.
And we just want to share some things that we talked about with Ms. Traficante and Ms. McLeod. Some good things that are going on. Athletics-wise, the boys and girls soccer team are off to an amazing start. The girls have a 3-game winning streak, and the boys are won 5 and lost 1 game. And then the golf team made state tournaments for the first time in a while. And I feel like just like the students and everyone are very excited about that, and they want to go to games more than ever. And it's just like interesting to see, like even like golf, like it's a sport that not a lot of people, especially now, it's just good to see more like interest in these sports and involvement.
Definitely. The Red Sea's definitely popping.
Yeah.
Another thing we like to mention more on athletics is that the Wakefield volleyball team has a record going for 6-1 while also having a game tonight. And then something that I'm a part of, the dance team, we're holding a clinic, a K-8 clinic, and basically the younger girls are going to be shadowing us, having like what it's like to be on the dance team for a day. So that's this Friday, and we're really excited to host that.
And then we have our first Friday early release, which everyone's excited about because it's going to feel like a 3-day weekend is what I'm thinking. Because you really go to school, you wake up and you go to school for like 2, 3, maybe 3.5 hours, and then you just have the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, everyone seems really excited by that prospect that I've talked to at least.
That's it for us.
Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate the perspective.
Thank you for having us.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Thank you so much. So next agenda item is late start, and then I'll kind of
I would let them know that if you're free to scoot, if you'd like to, you probably
You
have
have to tell them twice.
enough school
Sure.
committee
I told you to
business.
get around.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, please. I didn't see it in my...
Gotta make a motion to approve the plans. Move that the school committee approve the school improvement plans for the Doyle Early Childhood Center, the Dolbear, Greenwood, Walton, and Woodville Elementary Schools, the Galvin Middle School, and Wakefield Memorial High School as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Those in favor? And unanimous. Thank you so much. Sorry I missed that. It's a bad night for me.
No, no worries. It's always good to
It's
hear
not
from
on the agenda for a motion.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Oh, dun, dun, dun. Sorry.
It's not. So
It's-
it's not your fault.
It's
I know.
listed under
See?
motion.
I just read through the thing.
That is the proper way. Okay, so lead start or NRT?
I'm going to talk about late start. So the Student Services Subcommittee met with the administration in August and then again in September. In August, we welcomed Burlington Superintendent Dr. Eric Conti to come and talk about what their process was like in Burlington, how they received guidance, what their community forums were like, and they just talked to the very kind of clearly about what went well and what were some kind of things that they needed to work through. And I think the takeaways were many from that meeting, right? One of the takeaways was this idea of developing kind of guiding principles or a theory of action, right? Just to keep the conversation focused on, what a late start might be able to offer and why, right? And then in terms of process, how do you bring people into the conversation, bring different stakeholders into the conversation, and give them time and space to share what they're thinking, to share what they think might be a positive and what they think might be a challenge for either groups of students or for individual students and families. One of the kind of the guiding principles that Dr. Conti shared was that, and I think we might use a similar guiding principle, is this notion of we want to kind of make the greatest difference for as many students as possible, right? And so, and try to create kind of positive changes that are going to affect as many students as possible. We know that, it might not be all students, but it might be the best for the largest group of students, right? The other part and a takeaway for us was really grounding the conversation as well. And what is the research around this? Not what your perspective is, not how you think it, might impact different parts of your son or daughter's day, but thinking more about, what is the research around sleep, for students? What is the research around a later start, right? You know, and kind of what are we learning, and what can we glean from the medical field, which really led to the kind of the second part of our conversation, which was really kind of reaching out to. There's a network. There's a Later Start network. That's a national network, and a doctor on that board is Dr. Judy Owens, and she is a neurologist and sleep specialist at Boston Children's Hospital. She has also advised a number of districts and kind of the benefits of Later Start. And so she has come out to districts and, you know, has met with different groups and in community forums, and has not only presented, but has also very thoughtfully answered questions. So you can see her online. She's on YouTube. She's really everywhere. But one of the things that we were talking about, Eileen and I were talking about really trying to connect with her. And so I made contact with her, and we have a call scheduled for this coming Monday. So we're going to talk about the possibility of a schedule and having her come in to be part of a community forum to kind of kick off this conversation, right? To inform stakeholders, to inform parents and students of the benefit of a later start time. And then we're going to have other community forums to talk about, and we'll invite community stakeholders that rep from the youth sports groups, from rec, from just different communities, including, you know, obviously, you know, the teachers union, and just bringing kind of stakeholders in to talk this through, right? And then after we're through, the plan is to have 3 community forums, to compile the data, to do a presentation, and then to make a final proposal and recommendation to the school committee. That's what we're working on right now. And so we're pleased at the progress that we've made. It's more concrete than kind of we're moving out of the talk phase and more into the concrete action phase, which we're pleased about. So that's a quick update on Late Start. Happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Anything to add?
Of course.
Just wanted to add that I'm gonna get it wrong because I don't have my notes up right now, but like, we are one of the last in the Middlesex districts to even look at late start times.
So
we're the last or like the second to last?
No, there's 4.
Yeah, there's 4 of us
Four
remaining.
of us, 4 remaining out of
Okay.
12.
That's what it was.
So there's 4 remaining out of 12.
So it's not like we're not pioneers
Yeah,
here. This
yeah.
is
Yeah.
something that's already been looked at, discussed. Other districts are doing it, so, or have done it. Okay.
So you talked about like the medical data, like the doctor.
Sure.
And maybe I'm wrong, I was under the conclusion or understanding that data was pretty much settled science, like that it is like 100% beneficial. I just thought the data already showed that it was definitely a benefit for students to go into high school. So, like, sorry to be going to school later. I'm sorry, I'm tired. I need earlier start time for the school committee. But am I right with that, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it depends where you sit, Kevin. I think, you know, this conversation is kind of flattened and hasn't gotten a lot of traction through COVID or even post-COVID, to be completely honest, right? So I think there's a lot of information and a lot of practices that were very effective pre-COVID, and you know, Wakefield made a commitment to really explore this and to propose a change. You know, COVID happened and things kind of went flat, right? And so along with that, also, I think has been kind of the opportunity to talk and engage community members about it. So a lot of us believe that the science is settled on it, but others, we're just trying to re-engage people and kind of get them back up to date, right? And so it's not to tell people what they already know, but it is to kind of to engage or reintroduce, you know, what the science is, and so and what, you know, what the doctors are seeing, what Dr. Judy Owens is seeing in her practice, right? And how does it impact students, right? So
Yeah, I would just assume, and maybe I'm completely wrong,
Yeah.
it's just my assumption, that there's enough high schools that have switched, not just in Massachusetts, but
Yeah.
across the country, that there has to be a data set that would even show, like, let alone what doctors are saying about it.
Yeah.
Just academic outcomes, like, there must be tons of data points that would show an effect on it. I've done no research on this, but I just assume that it.
You will be one of the people that will benefit from this kind of discussion. So
Yes.
There are also probably likely people in our community that that maybe have access to that data, but might still have sort of extra questions on the outside. And so I think it's
so this is
the
very
idea.
layered. This is very layered, and so yes, there's looking at the science of it, but then there's looking at so how do you effectively make this change?
Oh, I'm with you on that.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, so again, we're trying to start the conversation in an objective space to try to really just say, okay, if we should explore this objectively, how do we do it, right? Because I think we've seen districts that have rushed into this that have said, and then it becomes a series of compromises. Well, this is difficult, other things are difficult, so they compromise minutes away or chunks of time away, so they'll start their day 15 minutes later or 10 minutes later. Say that's the change we've made. When the research really doesn't support a 10-minute change or a 20-minute change. So, things like that, right? And so, but really just trying to start in a, what is our theory of action, or what are our guiding principles? Right, really kind of building the conversation from there out. And I think one of the things that we need to do that is to make sure that the science is commonly understood, right? And so that's the premise there.
It's interesting, at Town Day, there was a gentleman that approached our table, does not have students in the district, but was very sort of animated about the need for a later start time. Now, he was talking 11 a.m., and we were like, maybe that's a bridge too far. But it was just interesting that it's not just, it's not just sort of people that are touching the school. It's even people outside sort of have probably heard the science and are wondering, just what are our students doing? So it'll be good to have sort of a community, a number of community sort of focused discussions.
Yeah.
And that are hopefully well attended.
Yeah, 11 is not even.
It was interesting. We're like, yep.
So
wait.
when do you dismiss if you start at 11? I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
I think it's like right around
6
dinner.
p.m.?
Dinner.
Yeah.
That's preschool parents.
Yeah.
Doesn't.
That is a long morning to keep
Yeah.
a preschooler busy before you drop them off. at 11.
Yeah, no question. But we just wanted to share that information and let the committee know and let the community know where we are in that process.
More to
Alright.
come after
Great.
our meeting Monday.
Great.
And next, I'd like to just give an update around first comments and updates. First, around parking. So we've made some changes to parking outside across the street on the west side, which is across the street from the high school on Farm Street, in that parents that are dropping off or picking up at Woodville and the high school now can have a live drop-off, right? And I think that has had, so that change has been made for a week now. So and I think that has had a positive effect on the high school and on Woodville Elementary. And with the barrels set up the way they were, it was really difficult for parents to kind of get a space to be able, especially at pickup in the afternoon, to kind of live park. And so that's an important piece. What we've also done is we've also opened up additional parking also on the west side of Farm Street beyond Nahant, right? So it's beyond the intersection up on the right. And so we think that has had a positive change as well. There has been some questions about crossing guards, and so crossing supervisors or traffic supervisors, there is their formal title. And so we had support here at the high school, which was a new position, which was not a budgeted position, but it is charged back to the project. And so we had someone crossing that lives close by. They were crossing at the intersection of Hemlock and Farm, right? And that was I think, very helpful, along with the speed tables that are in as well. I think that has slowed traffic down, the speed tables. But having a crossing supervisor there helping students, I think, has been really helpful. But we're having difficulty filling the open crossing guard position that we had, right? So the person that was at Farm and Hemlock transferred from another site. They transferred from Maine and Nahant, right? And so after being here for a little over a week, I think she felt like this is a lot. And so, she asked if she could go back to her original post, which was Maine and Hemlock, which I think pleased a lot of parents because I think they felt like middle schoolers were kind of left to their own devices there, right? I think talking to the police about this and, they're the benefit of at Maine and Nahant is that there are lights, right? And that there are crossing signals, and that alone is a tremendous help. We don't have that at the high school. So we are working right now to fill the position, and we're trying to be creative and think about if we can reconstitute the position and call it something else. We're thinking about the possibility of trying to bring in a police detail. So we're trying a couple of different things. There's no perfect in any of these scenarios, but we're working at that, right? So that's an update there. Parking does seem to have improved, but happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Do you know if we've had any crossing guards out as well that maybe we just haven't had replacements for? Because I thought somebody had said to me, like at Woodville, maybe there was like a missing crossing guard this past week, so I didn't know. No?
So there might have been someone out.
Okay.
But I believe that all of the other positions are filled.
Yeah, I don't think it was-
And we had a sub-training, so we have someone else coming on.
Right. So is the police detail on Main Street at Galvin, that's every day though, right?
Correct.
That's a police detail. So is that what you're also considering
Correct.
if that crossing guard position isn't filled, is having another police detail or possibly could be the same person? No, maybe
It's
not.
not gonna be the same person. But that's what we're exploring.
Okay.
Eileen, I think we're just looking at what we have for available resources.
Mhm.
And the problem with details as well is,
Yeah, how does that-
there are more details than there are
Right.
police to fill the details.
Yes, yeah.
So, that's a
Yeah.
big challenge as
Probably
well.
also competing with construction projects in town,
Right.
Yeah.
which
No.
there are plenty.
There's not any of that happening.
Yeah.
When is the lot coming back online?
The 1st of November
Okay.
is what we are told.
Okay.
And so that's barring any unforeseen delays in construction. So the student lot, for those that are kind of viewing, the student lot is up across from Landrigan, and we're expanding that lot. We're expanding it by 22 spots. So that would be, when that comes back online, that's going to be helpful for students.
Because it's locked out completely right now.
'Cause
That's where
right
some
now
of
it's
those
locked
students
out
are on
completely.
Farm Street. So not only will those students come off of Farm, but there'll be an additional 22.
Correct. And so, and not to complicate this conversation further, but we've also had a significant issue with our buses, right? So we have 9 buses in the district that serve both elementary and high school. So we'll have buses that will do a morning route and an afternoon route, and also different schools in the morning and in the afternoon, okay? So we've had 3 buses, bus 5, 6, and 9, that North Reading Transportation, we have a transportation vendor. So we do not do busing in-house, right? We do not own buses or lease buses and hire school bus drivers. We contract that out to North Reading Transportation, which holds the contract for, I want to say, probably 95% of the schools on the North Shore, right? So there's really no, after COVID, I think they may be the last man standing, or last company that's in business. And so, which is good for them, but also challenging for them because they have been hit terribly with a shortage of bus drivers. And they also have a very high rate of turnover. And the new bus drivers that are coming in also require a lot of training. So we design our own routes, which is a positive. And so that's done by Deidre Sandinato. And so, for example, bus 5 that we've had some difficulty with since the start of school, since the last 3 weeks, we just got a permanent driver. And just to kind of make sure that he was figuring everything out, you know, Deidre had him come into the office and review the bus route with him. But this is kind of a day-to-day, early morning conversation, before dismissal conversation, dismissal, evening conversation that we are having actively right now with the bus company. We've shared our concerns, and they've reported to us that they're doing absolutely the best they can. They've apologized. We've talked about, you know, how this is going to affect billing. We've talked about a number of different things to try to think about how we can demonstrate to the community that we're doing all that we can. And, you know, we'll have 2 good days, and then we'll have a day that's really less than good or really, really challenging, right? Today, in preparation for the meeting tonight, and just kind of taking notes and reviewing kind of talking points, we thought we were good. This afternoon, bus 9, which picks up at Galvin in the afternoon, was an hour late. The problem was that there was no communication from the company or on our part. And please, we own the communication piece as much as the company does. Even if we're getting information out to say that we don't have any information right now, we're working with the company. I think that alone can let parents know, you know, that there's someone on the other end of the phone, right? Or that there's someone on the other end working at this. This afternoon, the bus company didn't let us know that they were late, nor did we know that students were there waiting. So they were waiting in the Learning Commons. So that's a conversation that we need to figure out how to make sure that we're getting that feedback in a more timely manner so that we can, you know, communicate with families. And so that's where we're at. The majority of families have been remarkably flexible, remarkably supportive of other students and families. You know, they've kind of carpooled, they've done any number of things to help students. And I think the calls to us have been, I think, overall supportive and kind, even when parents are really frustrated and really concerned about just how this is going. I think parents have kind of comported themselves really in brilliant ways, in ways that I don't know, that surprise me sometimes. If I'm a parent and if my child were not picked up, or if we didn't know that, you know, I think, you know, that's where we're at. So what moving forward? Moving forward, we'll talk to the Galvin just about a feedback loop, just letting us know. And we're also going to try to create more than one person in central office who can also help Deidre with this communication, right? In the event that anyone needs to be out or they have a family issue, we want to make sure that we're trying to communicate really in a timely manner. And so that's a quick update on transportation. Happy to take any questions that you might have.
Did we send a message out to the community today who was affected by that bus? Because I know some parents had said their kids got home like 2 hours late. So, okay, so the ones that were affected did get some communication, like, even though it was after.
Yeah, so there were very few students left that weren't picked up. So, but yes, there was an email sent.
Okay.
Kevin.
Was it your son?
No.
Okay. I saw you shaking your head. I was like, I was going to say, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, that communication piece, I think, between the school and the parents, and even just saying, like, we don't know anything, we don't know.
Yeah.
It's more of just that, like, peace of mind, because I've had my daughter be late on the bus, and you literally, logically, you know, probably she's sitting at school waiting to be picked up and she's fine and she's safe. But like you immediately go down a rabbit hole of like, I think I've called you and I've been like, her bus is late. Do you know where it is? Because it was like 45 minutes late, I think maybe the first week or something like that. So just as a parent, like just having that peace of mind of like, they're safe, they're here, you can come pick them up. We don't know when the bus will be here. We're working with NRT, just something like that. I think it just goes a long way for parents who worry, like myself,
No.
like most parents probably. So
Yeah, no, I think,
yeah,
thank you for the feedback. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
no, just goes a long way. But
Yeah, happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the support.
Yeah.
just want to say one thing too. One shout out to the bus driver that has driven my kids for the past couple of years. I absolutely adore at NRT. So he's wonderful. His name's Malcolm. He's wonderful. So I just absolutely adore him, and he's wonderful with the kids. And so they have some wonderful employees there. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, they really do. So.
Great.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Item number 9 is chair comments. I don't really have much except to just go back to sort of the new teachers. I have occasion to talk to somebody who was newly hired in the district, and what came up sort of during the interview process is how much of a welcoming district Wakefield is, and sort of the mechanisms that are in place sort of in administration and in department groups, and then there's like mentorship programs, and there's just this immediate sort of feeling of belonging when people come in. I know we talk about this for students, but it's also really important for staff. And just, I guess, hearing from somebody that sort of went through that process, being in, like, putting on my school committee hat, I was just really, I felt sort of overwhelmed with warmth. Like, isn't that nice that, like, the district comes off that way and that they feel so accepting? So sort of thank you to the people that are part of that process, and to the educators, that these new people sort of, they come into their departments and they're part sort of sharing of themselves, and making people feel welcome. It goes all to culture, and our students pick up on that. So welcome to the new educators, and thank you for some of our veterans for making space for them.
Yeah. We would be remiss if we didn't thank Liz Doucette that runs our induction program. And so all of our new teachers get mentors, and Liz kind of checks in with every new teacher. There's a calendar throughout the year. They're scheduled. She talks them through supervision and evaluation, questions, grading, power school. I mean, soup to nuts. And I think, kudos to her and special thanks to her, because I feel like she's usually the first point of contact after after the principal hires you. Then you'll meet some counterparts in the department, and then you meet your mentor and you're off and running. But it's really one of the best things that never makes the light of day.
Is that just for teachers, or is that for all staff?
We have mentors for all staff, right? Or let me say this, for all Unit A members, right? And administrators. So not for
Not Unit C.
Not for C, no.
Just thank you.
Thanks.
And welcome to all the new hires. Item number 10, budget items.
We have a motion to accept a donation.
We move that the school committee accepts with gratitude the donation of $4,120 from Lakeland Tours DBA World Strides, stipends for the Galvin Middle School coordinators for the Washington, D.C. and New York City field trips.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Those in favor? And unanimous. Thank you so much. And thank you to trip coordinators. Number 11, subcommittee reports, finance and facilities. I can field that one. We have not met since our last meeting, but we are working to get another meeting on the books soon. Labor and personnel. Dr.
Yeah,
Scadler.
similarly, we haven't met either since our last meeting, so nothing to report.
Student services. Scholar.
Yeah, we met on September 12th, and the notes and minutes are actually in the packet. And Dr. Lyons actually gave a pretty good recap, I think, of how that went down and what's to come. So,
great. Thank you. Policy and communications.
So we met back on September 16th. At your request, one of the topics we discussed was the request of WA Unit A President Jess Cummings to have a union representative seat join us on the school committee. So we did discuss that topic. She was nice enough to join us for that meeting. I thought we had a productive back and forth talking about how to improve communication, not just with her request, but in both directions of how we try to just improve communication across the district. I also did have an opportunity to talk to our MASC representative to ask if there were any other schools, districts in the Commonwealth who had this type of practice in place. We were able to identify just one, but I did have a conversation with them. That was the city of Marlborough. And they have done this practice for 27 years. I did speak to the policy chair in Marlborough, and she reported that their particular situation has been positive in terms of improving communication. In terms of next steps, we need to reconvene the policy communication group to then try to determine what our recommendation back to the full committee will be. And so that's what we will have as a future policy and communication subcommittee agenda item, and then we'll come back to the full committee and have a greater discussion on the topic. We did have some other discussion topics in the meeting. One was, how do we improve the speed at which we can, and efficiency of reviewing the MASC policy book? So just as a recap, for the full committee, we've been trying now for, this is my second year on the committee, so since I've been here, to get through transitioning our policy site to one hosted by MASC. So far, we have only been through successfully one section review with MASC that we've been able to get published. Tonight, hopefully, we'll have number 2. So just for the full committee's benefit, one of the things we discussed was having a member of the subcommittee, Ms. Quinn, serve as our lead to review the policy book and give feedback, and then to bring that revised book to the subcommittee so that we can speed up the process. It's just been too difficult to try to review it in the subcommittee, and we're not allowed to collaborate on it outside of the meeting. So we're hoping that that will maybe allow us to speed up the process, and that way when we're seeing it, it's already been reviewed in full by a member of the subcommittee, and hopefully then our comments will be smaller in nature. We did have a brief discussion about the field trip and overnight field trip policy. As a next step, I will be reviewing out of band the MASC model policy on those 2 topics and trying to incorporate both our current field trip overnight policy and some edits to that policy that we wanted to see. And at Ms. Quinn's recommendation, she felt some of the things in our own policy may be described better, so I'll try to look for those things as well. And then at a future policy and communication subcommittee meeting, we will review hopefully a revised version of that to eventually bring back to the full committee. In terms of future meeting, we are hoping to talk about a CPAC policy, and so stay tuned for that, maybe in a future discussion.
You talked about your bullet point, other topics, but what was the school cameras that was?
So we had discussed whether or not we needed to have a school camera policy. There is a model policy from MASC on this topic. After discussions with Dr. Lyons, we decided at this point it didn't seem like we needed an actual policy on this topic, and that there was other guidance he was working with administrators on with regards to camera and the footage recorded by those cameras. And if we needed to have a policy in the future, we'd bring it back to the subcommittee for discussion.
Okay. Gotcha.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, is there a substantial difference between the MASC field trip policy the standard one and our current one?
You
In
know,
terms of like what it's actually saying?
I would say there's definitely some pieces that are missing. I have not gone through line by line yet, which I'm going to do to compare some of the things that Melissa thinks are better described in ours. So, but when I can tell you that when I looked at the edits we were going to make to ours and looked at the one from MASC, many of the things we wanted to make to ours were not in fact covered in the MASC one. But I was not looking at it with a lens of the stuff that was already in our policy. I was only looking at it at the edits to our own policy at that time.
I'll be honest, the MASC policy feels very micromanaging compared to the policy that we have right now. And I'm not sure that it would play out the way that we would want it.
The MASC is more micromanaging.
Yeah. Yeah. In ways that I don't think are great.
Yeah, so I'll work to, when I review it first, see if we can address those items, and then we'll bring it back to the subcommittee, and we'll have something that we like before we share it with you.
Okay.
Approval.
Great. And I see there's a motion.
There is. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
Go ahead and make the motion.
I'll make it. So I will say, we do have policy book D in front of us, and, oh, Kevin, I was reading off your screen. Come on, keep it there.
Oh,
And I'm going to make a motion to approve the policy book D as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Those in favor?
Well, was there a discussion?
Is there a discussion?
Any discussion?
Didn't ask on any other motion, only your motion. All right.
It's past 9
That was
p.m.
unanimous.
I'm getting a little loopy.
Who seconded?
I did.
Kevin. Yep. All right. Anything else?
Not in terms of the policy and communications group. We don't have another date on the calendar. I will say, and I think all the subcommittees have struggled with this, it's hard to find time that works for everybody. So that's why we're trying to look for ways that, comply with OML and allow us to be more efficient.
Very good. Okay. Any liaison reports? Pete?
So I have one from the Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission will hopefully at one of the next couple of town council meetings have a new student representative. So Dr. Lyons had put in a request to appoint a new representative to the Human Rights Commission, and the appointment of that is actually done by the town council. I'll save her name for that particular meeting. And there are two events right now that the Human Rights Commission has planned for the month of October. So October 10th, 7 p.m. at the AmeriCal, they're going to have a celebration of Indigenous cultural presentation, which will have slides, song, and dance. And then on October 30th at 6 p.m. in the Galvin Library, they're going to have an author there, Jennifer De Leon. And this is a program that's been co-sponsored with the Galvin PTO and the BB Library. And the presentation is called The Power of Storytelling. And that's, if I didn't mention a second ago, for Hispanic Heritage Month. So those are the two programs that they have in plans for October.
Great. HRC is still looking for additional members for those that are interested, right?
They're always looking for additional members. So anyone that's interested in joining, reach out to the town council and let them know that you're interested.
Great.
I have a couple about CPAC.
Yes.
CPAC 2 weeks ago had a meeting about our presentation about the new IEP. And I believe that was recorded, and I think Rosie was going to be sending it out, but I don't know how that's being dispersed or if it has already.
I'll check.
Okay, I wasn't
I'll check
sure
on that.
about how it was being sent out to people, but I know it was recorded for people to watch. And then there's going to be a CPAC meeting tomorrow at 4 p.m. if anyone would like to join. I believe it's on the website.
CPAC, another group that is
always looking for volunteers, yes.
Just one final
Done,
comment.
yeah.
So I'll just be very quick. MCAS results were released today. And so we are kind of going through those, and there'll be an MCAS presentation. We also received notification that the Dolbear Elementary was designated as a Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed School of Recognition this year. It's one of 57 schools in the state that was recognized for high achievement, student growth, as well as attendance indicators. So I think that might have been why TJ was a little excited tonight. And so,
You didn't say anything when all four of them were
rightfully so.
here. You did.
But there's going to be another presentation on MCAS. I wanted them to talk about school improvement and kind of keep the worlds a little separate because
Didn't want to pick favorites.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And MCAS is, it's a relative thing, right? So we don't want to. But the recognition and the work that's been done at Dolbear, especially in intervention, is really quite good. Yes, sir.
Did the Walton get that last year?
Yeah, we did. Correct. The Walton had also got it, I think, 2 years before that as well. And so Walton's a unique situation in that they have very, their subcommittee groups are fewer, and their programming is very different, right? And the size of the school, so there's some variables there. And one of our large elementaries making this it's a little different, but we're very pleased, and there'll be more information coming out tomorrow. But I just want to let the committee know.
Quite the accomplishment. No, it's great.
Duly noted. Thanks.
Okay, future dates and agenda items. Next school committee meeting will be Tuesday, October 8th, same bad time. And then future agenda items you can see listed. Is there anything that is of import to our members that they would like to see on the future agendas? No? All right. Well, if that changes, feel
Melissa
free
has
to.
hand up.
I'd like to see an update on the science curriculum.
Probably not until January, so it's pushing it out a little bit, but they're still piloting.
Yeah, we have that on our radar. We're thinking January as well. There's a consensus meeting in December. So I think probably late January would probably be a good time.
Great. School committee comments. Anybody? It's a late night. We're going to be quiet. Okay. Yeah, we didn't beat the town council's record. I think their meeting was 24 minutes last night. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah. Move that the school committee adjourn its meeting of Tuesday, September 24th, 2024.
Second. Motion's made and seconded. Those in favor? Unanimous. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Kara,
Thanks for coming,
when
Chris.
I saw you, I dropped off